Hello everyone and welcome to Winshuttle Transaction Basic Training. I am Miia from ADSOTECH, your Winshuttle partner in the Nordics, and I'm here to guide you through our three training packages. Basic, Advanced 1 and Advanced 2. These packages are designed for new Winshuttle transaction users with a developer license. The complete Basics package includes creating your first script, problem investigation, and the different recording modes. This is the last part of that package, concentrating on recording modes. Let's dive in. Our basic options in the recording modes are non-batch input mode, batch input mode, and GUI scripting. Non-batch input mode is the default one that Winshuttle usually suggests, so that's pre-selected for you when you get into this selection window. Non-batch input mode is the so-called default recording mode because of the functionalities that we have in it. So we can do the normal upload to get data from Excel to SAP. We can also download data, so read data from SAP to Excel. We can do extended logs. We can handle long text fields and all different things. Dynamic actions and user parameters are involved with this recording mode, but usually that doesn't really give us any problems or any real benefits either. Some benefits may be in the different actions section in your SAP window. So there are more buttons that we can record and use in our scripts and things like this. And that is compared to batch input mode. With batch input mode, we're only able to do upload, so getting data from Excel to SAP, which is what we normally use Winshuttle transaction for. But if you would have a case where you need to download data from SAP to Excel, then you cannot use batch input mode. Some transactions simply work better with the batch input mode. So we have this rule of thumb where we say that if we are actually creating new data in SAP, then we might want to go with batch input mode when we create our script. And if we are in fact trying to change existing data in SAP, then we would go with non-batch input mode. This rule doesn't always apply, but it's a good rule of thumb. The third main option that we have for recording modes is GUI scripting. It's a very special one. Non-batch and batch are if we talk about normal recording modes, we're essentially talking about non-batch and batch modes. Those are always run in the background and they work the quickest, let's say it like that. So the run is as fast as possible and so on. And with the non-batch mode, we have several features and functionalities that we can add to it as well. Some of those functionalities are available in batch input mode as well. But with GUI scripting, we are talking about something more complex. This type of scripting must be enabled in the SAP system separately. And there are some special recording requirements that we have to consider. There's also an extra functionality within GUI scripting, and that is usually the reason why we sometimes have to go to GUI scripting in the first place. Very often we just say that GUI scripting is the one that you want to avoid. Non-batch mode is the default mode, as I said. So why would we differ from that? Why would we use something else if Winshuttle normally suggests and recommends us to use non-batch input mode? Well, as I already mentioned, that some scripts and some SAP T codes simply run better with batch input mode. So that's one thing. Also, since we usually are sharing the scripts with other people, there's an added benefit in batch input mode that this mode does not remember your individual user settings. In most cases, this is not an issue even if we use non-batch input mode and the script remembers our user settings, but over here we don't even have to think about that. Messages might be different in the transaction. Again, if we are comparing batch input mode recording with a non-batch input mode recording. And also some pop-ups might get suppressed with batch input mode, again compared to non-batch input mode. Messages being different and pop-ups being suppressed, these might be a bad thing or they might be a good thing depending on the transaction and the script that you're trying to create. But it's good to know that with batch input mode this might happen. For instance, if you create a script with non-batch input mode and you see pop-ups that seemed very hard to handle in your script, they come up sporadically, you don't really know when they are popping up or things like that, then you might actually want to try batch input mode and see if those pop-ups get suppressed. So you don't get those pop-ups in your script and it's easier to handle. But then again, if the pop-ups are something that you absolutely need to be handling, meaning that there's some data that needs to be entered in those pop-ups or things like that, then you don't want them suppressed. The batch input mode probably cannot suppress them, so it doesn't make a difference there. Whenever you are thinking about the recording mode, which recording mode to use with your particular script, you can think about the rule of thumb. So creating new data, batch input mode, changing existing data, non-batch input mode. You can think about that, or you can think about the different functionalities that you need in your script. So if you want to have extended log, or you need to download data from SAP to Excel, then you absolutely need to have non-batch input mode. You can also go on to the Winshuttle support site and check for any recording mode recommendations and any other tips and tricks before you start recording your script and your transaction. So if you decide to use batch input mode, it means that you cannot read from SAP. So no getting data from SAP to Excel. And it also means that your user settings will not be remembered by the script. So if that needs to happen or you need to read from SAP, then do not use batch input mode. Couple of examples where we know for a fact that batch input mode is the best option. That will be material classification characteristics in MM02 and bill of material handling in CS01 or CS02. There we have for sure found out that batch input mode is the better way to go. And again, I'm comparing to non-batch input mode because these are the two so-called normal recording modes that we mainly use. Before we go into the third main option, so GUI scripting, I need to mention that there is a fourth option for some of you out there. If you open your Winshuttle and you start recording a new script, you might see a fourth recording mode called function module. This particular recording mode is only available in certain Winshuttle versions. We started seeing this recording mode in version 10.4.1 and is there up to the latest 10 point version. It is again scratched from version 11 onwards, where it is actually smushed back up together with the so-called non-batch input mode. Essentially, function module mode is the same as the non-batch input mode, but in these 10.4.1 up to the last 10 version, they were separated to make a difference between the two, and there was a huge difference between the SAP basis levels that companies were using. So if your SAP basis level is 7, support package 24 or later, then you should go with the function module mode instead of non-batch. But again, everything that I've talked about regarding non-batch input mode, it goes for the function module mode as well. They are essentially the same, But if your SAP basis level is high enough, then you should go with the function module mode instead of non-batch mode. If for some reason your Winshuttle version is lower than 10.4.1, then of course you don't see function module mode as an option. And as soon as you move to version 11 and onwards, you won't see it again either. From version 11 on, the function module and non-batch mode are one and the same again, as I mentioned before. So don't worry about your SAP basis level at that point anymore. It's fine with whatever basis level. So moving on to GUI scripting. This is the mode that we use when nothing else works. So for instance, if you absolutely need to use the tree view control in some of the T codes like PA40, then we need GUI scripting because non-batch and batch modes are not able to record the tree view control that we have in transactions like PA40. You can use non-batch and batch mode to record PA40, but then you have to keep away from the tree view control. So what you would normally do in the tree view control, if you can accomplish that somewhere else by using the menus, using buttons, whatever, then you can record that transaction with batch or non-batch modes. But if you absolutely have to touch the tree view control, then non-batch and batch mode are not able to help you. GUI scripting is the only one that can go into the tree view control and handle it in some way or form. The most common case, though, why we would start using GUI scripting is that we need to update some existing data in a list in SAP. That could be sales order lines, purchase order lines, invoice lines. It could be price conditions on a service contract. It could be any number of things, but it's a list of data in SAP and we need to update some of that data. That means that we actually need to locate the line of data that we need to update. Normally we would use buttons, SAP buttons, to do the search and find the correct row. But if we don't have buttons that can accomplish this for us, then most likely we need to go with GUI scripting and a functionality that we call index-based if. Index-based if is a functionality that's only available in GUI scripting. And what it does, it actually looks through the whole list of data in SAP, and then based on some criteria, is looking for a specific row of data. When it finds it, it's able to update the data on that specific row. And this functionality is not possible with non-batch or batch input modes. What we need to do there is we need an SAP button or something similar that we can use and possibly give our search criteria there in the SAP window and then find the correct row based on that. But with GUI scripting and the index-based if, we're able to do the search without any SAP buttons, and the search functionalities in a way built in to the script. So no functionality in SAP is required. If you have a case where you need to use GUI scripting, that scripting mode needs to be enabled in your SAP system. So that will be the test system and the production system, of course. You need the test system to create the script, and then you need the production system to actually run the script in production. So it needs to be enabled in both systems. It also needs to be enabled for the user in their SAP. With their credentials, it needs to be enabled as well. Whenever we execute a script that was recorded using GUI scripting mode, it means the execution is much slower, again compared to batch and non-batch modes, and the execution always happens in the foreground, meaning that we actually see the SAP screens on our computer screen. Nothing has to be done about the SAP screens, so we're not talking about anything like step-by-step run, just a matter of Winshuttle opening up your SAP GUI and flipping through the SAP windows automatically. So when you hit the run button, when the SAP connection opens up, you will see the SAP windows, but you don't have to do anything about them. When the run is finished, the SAP window will close down automatically, and you will see the error messages or success messages in Excel. Recording a script with GUI scripting is more technical, meaning that there's less intelligence behind it, and therefore it's more error prone. As it says here, all screens and pop-ups get recorded when you do GUI scripting, meaning that all the search functionalities that you're able to use when you do a batch or non-batch script, you should not do those when you record GUI scripting. Because again, there's no intelligence behind this GUI scripting mode. At least not the same intelligence that we have with batch and non-batch modes. So if we start recording and then we use the search buttons for a specific field in SAP, GUI scripting mode will actually record the search process as well. And if it gets recorded, it also gets executed just like that whenever we run the script. So over here, by using the search functionalities and other things like that, we actually make the script longer and longer and longer. The longer the script, the slower the execution. So with batch and non-batch mode, it is essential that you do, I would say, as little as possible, so as few steps as possible. But here with GUI scripting, it's even more essential. The execution is already much slower compared to non-batch and batch modes, and everything gets recorded that you do in SAP, even the search functionalities for specific SAP fields. So make sure that you know exactly what button to press next and where to put your cursor next if you start doing GUI scripting. There is a functionality in Winshuttle that we call linking scripts, and it is mentioned here. It means that we can create scenarios and chains of scripts where we simply click run button once and then the whole chain of scripts will run automatically. That can be used here with GUI scripting as well, meaning that I said before that we only want to use GUI scripting when nothing else works. So what we would like to do is use GUI scripting as little as possible. We only do that thing that we absolutely have to do with GUI scripting. And then all the rest of the steps, that whatever we need to do, we will put into a different script that's a batch or non-batch script, and then we can link these scripts together. So from an end user perspective, it looks like one script, but in actuality, it's 2, 3, 4 different scripts that are running. But we can save time if we do as little as possible with GUI scripting, and then do everything that we can with batch or non-batch modes. We'll come back to linking in the other training sessions. So normally we use non-batch or batch modes when we create a script. What I would like to demonstrate here is what GUI scripting might look like when and if you have to use it at some point in your Winshuttle careers. So let's start creating a new script. I'll record MM02, something very, very similar to what we have done before when we created our first script and looked at problem investigation as well. We used a very similar script. The difference is that now I'm going to use GUI scripting as my recording mode. So you should be able to make out a difference. GUI scripting. Material number. Selecting basic data 1. And then recording the fields that I want to have in my script. You might not notice any big difference right now when I'm creating the script, when I'm recording, and that's fine. What you might notice while recording is that the response from the SAP window can get much, much slower. But that's fine. The speed of your recording, I mean the steps that you do while you are recording, that says nothing about the speed of the execution once the script is finished. Back. and get prompted to save. Here's the first big difference that you might notice when you record with GUI scripting. When I save my data, the SAP window does not automatically close. Again, there's no enough intelligence in this recording mode for Winshuttle to know that, hey, we have finished the recording, we can just step out of SAP. The user, that's me, needs to step out of the SAP window manually. So I will click on exit. I'll click on exit again. I want to log off. Yes. If I don't close that SAP window, the control will never ever get back to my Winshuttle window. So I'm not able to do my mapping because the actual recording has never finished. So I will close that SAP window and I will be here. Recording done. Mapping to be done. The mapping is the same, just dragging and dropping. What you might notice here, a slight difference in the field names. If you compare these to the ones that you might have in a non-batch or batch script, then you might notice a difference. But that doesn't matter, all we want to do is drag and drop. Dragging and dropping done. We're fine to exit and saving my files. Mapping done on the left side. Getting ready to run, so I will open my Excel file. I have enough test data in my Excel template, so I will simply run my script. And now you should see a difference. And there we go. I didn't have to do anything after clicking run. I click run and I click OK for my SAP credentials, and after that there's nothing that needs to be done. Winshuttle will run the script, although I will see the SAP screens, and then I will have my log message here in Excel. Normally I would not use GUI scripting for a script like this. I would do a script like this with non-batch or batch mode, but I wanted you to see the difference, at least the basic difference, when we have a script that's done with GUI scripting and what it looks like when you run a script like that. Again, the reason why we would go for GUI scripting is usually the fact that nothing else works, meaning that we don't have those necessary buttons in SAP that we could search through a list or something similar. So we need, for instance, this GUI scripting functionality that we call index-based if. That's the main reason we would go for GUI scripting with a particular scenario that we have in mind. But we will always start by exhausting ourselves with the possibilities of batch and non-batch modes, because simply if we can make those scripting modes, recording modes, work, in our particular scenario, they will be so much faster and easier for an end user to use. They are easier for the developer to create and maintain, and they are quicker in execution, so the end user will like them better as well. Okay, that concludes the last portion of our basic package for Winshuttle transaction. Now we know how to create a simple script, investigate issues when error messages appear, and we have some idea what recording mode to try first. This brings us to the end of our basic training. When you feel ready for the next step, you should check out training packages Advanced 1 and 2 for more features and capabilities of Winshuttle transaction. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for joining.